Okie dokie. So I'll go ahead. Hey everyone, welcome to our training session for EXP Military Network. Today we have Logan Krause here to share some information with us about realtor safety because we all know how important it is to be safe. There's a lot of wackos out there. Is that a good way to put it, Logan? So we gotta
Oh,
stay out
something.
there. Yeah, we gotta stay safe in what we do in our day to day. So thank you for being here, Logan. We appreciate you, and I will let you take the helm of this training for us. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, let me get this moved around a little bit. But yeah, so I'll jump right into it. I got a little about me here in the slides. Let me know if they're not changing for you. First and foremost, I always like to say I'm a husband and father first. After that, I did retire out of the Army in 21. I'm licensed in Montana and Texas. I have a small team back in Montana. Work with the Metro program a lot. It's kind of where I like to be in that teaching role. And then I work with the United States Concealed Carry Association as one of their certified firearms instructors, which is one of these courses that we put on. And then I serve on the Houston Association of Realtors Safety Task Force. So, as a general overview, we'll hit why are private showings dangerous? I think for most of us, it's kind of a simple, obvious answer to that. But how do we go about creating a personal safety plan? And then some different devices, apps, tools that you can use to stay safe in the process. Right, so our job is inherently dangerous. Naturally, we do all the things as a kid we were taught not to do. Don't get in a car with a stranger. Don't go to a stranger's house. We go places where it's dark. We don't have cell service with people we don't know. The other thing too is a lot of people think that we have money or we have access that where we can provide them to get to a house or something that maybe they want to break into. So uh, they all they all know who we are, how to get to us, and it gives them such an advantage to do their homework before we even get there. Especially in down markets, or if you're struggling, I see a lot of agents that'll lower their guard on safety because they have to take the showing, they have to get after it, or they really need that paycheck, and so they're willing to make sacrifices in safety, and sometimes it really does cost them. So, as we know, Beverly Carter is probably one of the best known examples in the industry of realtors that were being attacked. Her body was found, 30 minutes away from where she was doing the property showing. But, I don't want to say this is too much of an old case, but it was 2014, so it's 11 years ago. But it's not an isolated incident at all. It is continually happening, and it's happening all over the US and Canada, and I'm sure in other countries. We're just too easy to target. So these are USCCA slides, so I added some updated stats here. The NAR member safety report, if you guys don't know, the National Association of Realtor publishes this every year. You can access it if you're logged in with NAR. But these are some of the big ticket situations where, 22% in 2024 experienced a situation that made them fear individually for their own safety, or they did something like met a new or prospective client alone at a secluded location or property, which is kind of a no-no, or felt unsafe while hosting an open house alone. So these were the top three. You can see that some of the numbers got a little bit better, but the open house number did jump quite a bit. So breaking down those situations, you can see where they felt unsafe. Again, showing open houses and meeting a client for the first time. They're always the top three, but they're always the three most dangerous things that we do. If you're driving in your car, that must be because you're in Houston, and then it would be 100%. So this is my ad. I usually ask agents, who do you feel like who is it the job of to keep you safe? Yes, you have some personal, you know, omen of yourself to do that, but I do run into a lot of agents that say, well, it's my broker's job to have these SOPs, or it's NAR's job, or it's the association's job. They need to do a better this, better that. They put a lot of pressure on the safety and that kind of stuff to everybody else but themselves, hoping for some kind of app or some kind of new feature that they can give that these people are supposed to provide. Um, I don't completely disagree with that, but when we look at things, does your broker have an SOP? I found a lot of brokers don't. My team, we have a code word. If you call and ask for the red file, we have a procedure for that, which we had to, of course, work out. I need to know your emergency contacts. I need to know where you are and those kind of things. But it's kind of that code word if I don't feel comfortable that anybody can call on our team and we're going to go support them. My other graph is what I really like is, of course, hey, it's NAR's job, it's the association's job. So we look at the realtor safety program sources and the most useful safety ones. And if you look at the big number 70 down at the bottom, none of these are helpful. Welcome to NAR 2025. None of this is helpful. Um, Sorry, I'm not NAR's biggest proponent, but it goes to show you that we need to take a more proactive role at safety at the individual level and at the team level, and I think at the brokerage level, to really push things that get people engaged and get people thinking about stuff, and leave the faux pas or the insecurities of certain things out the door and actually have the conversation. So I always like to tell people that you'll be 90% more prepared for a situation or an attack or really anything you do if you spend a little time thinking about it before it ever happens. When the moment actually happens, your brain is not going to have time to do anything but react. This being the mill net, we all know, and I think everybody probably in this room has seen that, we don't turn into the Hulk when the shit hits the fan. We fail to our lowest level of training, right? So this first step of that training is identifying the problems and identifying what we need to be doing and thinking about going into these. So when you're making your personal safety plan, start asking these questions. Do you meet potential clients face to face? Or do high risk things? Or do you meet them at the office? Do you meet them for coffee? How can we mitigate some of those? Are you somebody that's willing to give up a little bit of safety in exchange for that deal? Will you ignore that red flag? Do you actually recon your showing, your open house? Do you actually use the Forewarn app that most of us get free, or do you just have it on your phone? So go through these steps, even things as far as first aid and what you carry with you. What is your plan to defend yourself? God forbid you have to do it. Because if you don't have a plan or you haven't thought about it yet, you're never going to action it in the moment. All right. I love this is my favorite thing to harp on in any class I give. Situational awareness, right? Situational awareness is the currency that buys you the time and opportunity to solve the tactical problem. Self-defense always comes down to time. And situational awareness is my favorite thing because you are never guaranteed to win a gunfight. You're never guaranteed to walk away with the same amount of holes that you started with. So the best thing that we can do in any of these situations is hopefully avoid it, period. And you don't want to deal with the aftermath of it anyway. So we want the time to make good decisions and potentially keep us safe and not have to actually defend ourselves given the option. So how do we get that time? Well, we got to look around. We got to get our head up. I added the little thing of definitely a realtor. This is 90% of us, almost 90% of the time. We are glued to our phone. It's what makes us money. We have clients, we have problems, we have appraisals going bad. We are glued to the damn phone. The problem with that, though, is your brain is so hyper focused. It is using so much computing power to pay attention to everything your phone can do. You are blocking out 90% of your surroundings. I mean, we've seen people walk off sidewalks and almost get hit by cars. You are completely tuned out. And this kind of goes into, looking like a victim. If you're on your phone and you're a 250-pound male compared to a 140-pound female, I will personally go after you before I go after the female because if she's paying attention, I just want to do my thing and get gone and get away with it. But if you're not paying attention, I have all the tactical leverage to surprise you and do whatever I need to. So stay off your phone, keep your eyes up. Of course, we also know that you can only see so much, right? We have peripherals to 180. Go back to, the basic military squad movements, right? Every 10th step, turn around and look behind you. These things that I think vets actually have a really good advantage to because they're already somewhat ingrained in us, right? We're going to get in step if we want to or not. But use those things and think about it, and everything you've done, it just treat it like that military movement, and you will find yourself being aware. Oh, sorry, my picture didn't show up. So yeah, definitely a realtor right there. All right, so when we start talking time, seconds count. So in any of these situations, we really only have three outcomes, right? We have the time to avoid it in the first place, the time to escape, or enough time to defend ourselves. And really, in all of these, we're talking seconds to a few minutes. Avoiding, naturally, that's where we want to be if we can at all times. If you have 3 to 5 minutes, you probably have time to avoid the situation in its entirety. You have time to look somebody up on Forewarn, take an extra step in identifying who you're working with, looking around your vehicle, finding a situation that you can kind of see and gives you the ick, the hair on the back of your neck starting to stand up, and you can avoid it, hopefully at all costs. We start talking in that 30 45 second range to that 3 minute mark. We probably don't have time to avoid it anymore, but we might have time to escape it. We have time to react and look for possible outs. And much like an airplane, sometimes the closest exit is behind you. So use that time to try and think about your escape plan. When you're at these open houses, you're at these showings, have that brain thought, hey, if something happened right now, where would I go? It's a 4 to 5 second cognitive little test in your brain, but if something happened right after that, you're already fresh on what you're doing. And then, of course, that same mental question. If I only got 30 seconds to defend myself, what am I going to do? I've met a lot of people, they're like, oh, I'm going to pepper spray. Neat. If you carry pepper spray and that's an option for you and you're comfortable there, you're trained for that, fantastic. But can you get to it and employ it in 30 seconds? I would argue 98% of them will fail that in 30 seconds. Um, and that includes tasers, guns, you name it. Nobody trains with what they carry, and they don't have the time to actually do it. So the sooner you can identify that individual or that situation as bad, the more likely you are to get out of it or avoid it or escape it in the first place. All right, I love Marines because they keep shit simple. The color codes of awareness is actually developed by Colonel Jeff Cooper, who was a Marine, former Marine. He kept it very simple in just colors, right? So if we were to honestly ask ourselves, I think most of us run around in condition white, right? We're in the United States. We actually have it pretty well, even if we have high crime rates and stuff like that. But our lives are pretty nice, right? We go to the store, we're not thinking about being attacked. We don't wake up thinking that we're going to get murdered today. And so we kind of walk around in the oblivion, right? That's how we go to the store. My wife is that way. I can push the cart, 40 feet down the aisle before she even recognizes it's gone, with her purse in it. She walks around in condition white. If you're doing anything work related in real estate, you don't want to be in condition white. You're just way too absent to what's going around you to be in any kind of safe capacity. Condition yellow, that's where we're just alert, right? We don't look like a victim. We're making eye contact. We're paying attention to what's going around us. We're looking for those warning signs. We're not mean mugging people. We're not threatening. We're not, trying to shoot anybody that comes within 21 feet of us. We're just paying attention. We're just being that little bit hyper aware, which is probably on 90% of your guys' VA claims. Just that hyper awareness. Pay attention to what's going on around you. We get to condition orange. This is where you've identified an issue. Something might imminent be happening. Somebody's following you. Something doesn't feel right. You need to start thinking about what the next plan of action is. Am I going to avoid it? Am I going to escape it? Or do I need to defend? You want to start thinking about that red line now, because when it happens, if you haven't identified what that red line is going to be, when we do cross into condition red, you're already going to be behind the power curve. So that condition orange, that's when it's like, okay, I recognize this. This is not good. So we're going to step in, decide our line in the sand, And then hopefully we can avoid it or escape. In worst case, if we go to condition red, we defend ourselves. I also challenge you, if you're anybody out there that carries a firearm on you, concealed or otherwise, daily, it is your responsibility as a firearm owner to always be in condition yellow while carrying any kind of defensive weapon. So, like we mentioned, the whole not looking like a victim, it would shock you how much this little thing will stop crime related to you. Sometimes I'll ask people, like, raise your hand if you lock your car door at night. They all raise their hands, and I'm like, why? If I want in, I'm just going to break the window. Like, if I want in, I'm going to get in. And, but they're like, well, it's that little step that, I'm not the easy target. And that's 100% what we're talking about here is not looking like the victim. My house is very well lit and has a lot of thorny bushes because I don't want them to attempt my house at all. I want them to look at it and go, nah, there's an easier one next door. Like, I like my neighbors, but I'm not in charge of lighting their house. I'd rather push them to the side, right? So we do the same thing personally by not looking like a victim. Again, we're in that condition yellow, we have good posture, we're confident, we're looking around, we're making that eye contact, maybe we're, changing our pace a little bit. Just something to throw off their attack cycle or make them think, you know what, they're not the easy target today. I'm going to go move on to that person stuck in their phone. I actually have a little bit of a story on this one. One gal in one of my classes, we talked about this, and she told me that her daughter was putting groceries away in her car. So she had the hatch up and she's loading groceries back to everything. And she just kind of felt off because she saw a gentleman in another car a few lengths down as she walked to her car. And she just stopped and she just stared at the guy, absolutely stared him down with that mom look, like, oh shit, I'm in trouble. And eventually the guy left, and she's like, so he was obviously a bad person. I'm like, actually, I mean, we don't know that. I'm not going to say he was, but it's the power of the ICU that if he was a bad person, he left because he's like, she is not my target today. And even if he wasn't, he was like, this lady's crazy, and it completely diffused the situation. So never underestimate the power of a little bit of eye contact of being like, hey, I'm tracking. So all right, in real estate, I think another good principle is distance management, right? Me personally, I learned this lesson the hard way. I actually, one of my few first showings, I went into the room. I had the client lock the door behind me and lunged at my hips. I carry appendix. She was like 70, so I just stepped aside and she fell. Come to find out, she was a dementia patient that had wandered. But the fact that I walked in and she was able to lock the door behind me, if that would have been a different situation, really opened my eyes, right? So I like to practice, don't lead your clients through the house, follow them. I've also found it as a good business practice, like they're adults, let them have their space and just let them know, hey, I'm going to be here just in eyesight so I can make sure you're not, doing anything, pocketing anything, that kind of stuff. I'm there for questions, but I always want to try and keep myself near an exit, to the exit, not with them behind me on the stairs, and following, not leading. That gives me the tactical advantage. I don't necessarily want them in arm's length of me. The more distance is the more time that I have to react. And that could be as simple as if there's an island in the kitchen, just keep it between you. Anything you can keep between you and the client, a couch, anything simple will help that distance management. So, um, let's see. Checking in with a trusted source. This will help you a lot. And sometimes, even if you don't have a trusted source to check in with, you can do an audible and talk to yourself a little bit and be like, oh, hey, will you give me one quick second? I need to go check in with my broker, my husband, and let him know that we arrived and that we're leaving in about a half an hour. You don't actually have to make that call. But sometimes if you have that feeling, you can, enunciate or before you go inside, be like, oh, 1 second, let me go back. And it's letting them know or letting them infer that you did check in or somebody is waiting or, tracking where you're at and about what time you're doing. In reality, you should be doing this, right? If it's a spouse, a coworker, broker, confidant, right? Hey, this is when I'm leaving. This is who I'm meeting. We're planning to leave at rough, X amount of time. I'll let you know when I'm on my way home. And here's the information on the client, right? I always like to leave some kind of information on the client that I'm meeting behind. Even if it's a file on my computer that my broker has access, he can get into my computer in an emergency, whatever that case is. So that way, God forbid, if the cops have to look somewhere, they can start going after somebody. But sorry, I'm looking at the comments. Vehicle safety, I think this is really overlooked with a lot of agents. I think a lot of agents, they'll say, hey, I have first aid in my car. If it's the kit that came with your car, you don't have first aid. You probably have 1,000 Band-Aids that don't fit anything and won't do anything. And it's probably still wrapped in cellophane from the manufacturer. Please go look at your first aid kit. And I highly advise, upping that to something a little bit more significant. And when I say that, I'm talking about like combat infused gauze. You guys are military, get an IFAC resupply kit, you have a tourniquet. 45, you get in a car accident, which is really likely for real estate agents. It's going to take, on average, at best, 13 minutes for an ambulance to get to you. You'll bleed out with major arterial bleeding. So have a little bit of that control to bleed, maybe an IFAC kit accessible in your vehicle, not just Band-Aids. If you're an agent in 2025 still letting clients in your car, you're crazy. Don't do that, period. I don't even let my parents, if I'm driving them around as clients, because I don't want to hear them. Just don't do it. Look into vehicle tracking devices. A lot of vehicles have these. You can get some that plug in. I have a couple of scenarios. I have the one in the vehicle. I also have a air tag that I unzipped my seat upholstery a little bit and tucked in there, just for a little bit of a backup. But then if you don't check in or somebody's looking for you, they can track where your vehicle's at, because most of us can track phones as well. So you kind of have that double layered protection. As an amateur doomsday prepper, I really like the whole idea of a get home bag or get home kit. I'm not saying you got to go crazy, but think about your distance that you would travel, and if you broke down and had to walk home, what do you need? Have some water, maybe have some food, grab a leftover MRE from 10 years ago when you were in. Have some of these things. If you're a cold weather climate, have a blanket. Just something that will get you home if your vehicle broke down. Small amount of cash and small bills, in case. Ladies, especially, I noticed this with my wife. She's walking around in heels. Have a pair of tennis shoes in your trunk. Something simple. And of course, a lot of agents love to put the lockbox, next to a big mud puddle, so it's probably a good idea anyways. Your vehicle unlock settings. Most, when you hit the unlock button, it unlocks all four doors. That's a setting you can change. So when you hit the unlock button, it only unlocks the driver door. It is kind of a pain in the butt. However, when it comes to safety, it is a phenomenal little tool. So that way, as soon as you hit the unlock button, if somebody's on the other side of the car waiting for you, they can't open the door and gain access to your vehicle as you were attempting to do so. I would say enter your car with a purpose. So think about what you're doing, right? When I get in my vehicle, it took some time and training, but I get in, I lock the door, I start the vehicle, I put it in drive or reverse, depending on which way I need to go. And then I set my stuff down. Then I put my seatbelt on, do anything else. That lock of the door is going to buy me a heads up when they try and grab it. And I'm already in gear. So worst case, I can just stomp the accelerator and go. So if you can train yourself into that little habit, you're going to be way better off. God forbid somebody tries to carjack you or gain access to you or your vehicle in the moment. Naturally, look before you enter your car. Look in the back seat. Look on your car. Look at your tires. Look at the whole thing as you approach it. They're getting really tricky nowadays with tagging vehicles or tagging you. And so my whole thing is, if it wasn't there when you left and you didn't put it there, one, don't touch it, and two, get off the X. Nobody puts a quarter or a zip tie in your door handle for any reason that's positive. I've seen people leave the little tiny water bottles in your wheel well, right? They want to distract you, or you're marked. Fentanyl absorbs very easily through the skin, and they'll soak a $20 bill in it, and then 3 blocks later, you're passed out. An hour later, you're in Mexico. So if it wasn't there, don't touch it, or use some kind of membrane to make sure that it's in between you and your skin. But for me, I just say get off the X, call somebody, go back in the store, maybe get somebody from security to go with you. Something's not right about that. Before meeting your clients, there's a ton of apps and stuff that you can do. Research them, forewarn them, make sure they are who they are. If you've never met them in person, my thing is, if you call me, I'm going to say, hey, cool, we got that showing at 3:30, but just so you know, at 1 o'clock, let's go have coffee. I got some forms for you to sign, some disclosures. But the best thing is you're going to realize I'm not an axe murderer. I can see that you're not an axe murderer, and we can make sure that we're a good fit as a team as we go through this process before we go forward. So now I can spend that moment to make sure in a public place that, if I'm going to get the ick or not, or there's a situation that I want to avoid, I'm not alone at a house in while I'm doing it. Definitely look up the crime statistics for the neighborhood. Down here we have Greens Point. We call it Guns Point for a reason. It's earned that nickname. So if you know that area has some certain crime volatilities to it, a lot of carjackings, and you have a nice Mercedes, be mindful of those certain things. And kind of like we discussed, new clients, ask them to come somewhere public, your office, or a coffee appointment, something to that effect. Me personally, I don't show you a house without a signed compensation agreement of any fashion. So that's just my rule now, and it's there for safety in business. When we park, obviously, park in a manner that allows you to leave. I think for vets, this is probably going to be a little bit natural. Don't park in the driveway if you can, at all. And if you do, back in or make sure they can't box you in. So if there's any kind of lighting available, of course, that's always a bonus. But the other thing is look up and down the street. Is there somebody in a vehicle, in a van, half block down that doesn't look that way? What do we, take in those surrounding features of like, that's kind of odd. I like to be there a little early, naturally, just to kind of take some of that in. But these are all things that we can be looking at when we're parking. Start looking at the building, start looking around us, see what's going on. If possible, I'd love to actually get in there and get some lights on. If it's dark, I do like to unlock my escape routes. I like to look at the building. I like to, again, look up and down the street. And I really like to be there before my clients because then I can look at my clients and see what they're doing. If I've already met them and now they seem off, that's a warning sign to me. If they show up with a bunch more people than expected, that's a huge warning sign to me. It's actually happened where I was with a female and all of a sudden she had a gaggle of 9 of her best friends show up at the showing. I wasn't in love with it from a lot of factors, mainly from a business side, but I actually told them like, hey, I didn't realize you were going to bring this many people, and I didn't communicate that to the other agent to let the seller know. So I'm gonna have to reschedule this and ask permission for this many people to be here. Because another thing too is I can't watch 9 people in a house, so God forbid something went missing. Um, but ladies, the inverse, like if it's a single male client and they show up with 6 other males, that's a bad situation. So, and of course, if they bring their father-in-law, good luck with the rest of your deal. Approaching the property, for the military people, I mean, this is like IED checks, right? 525s, concentric circles. Look at, again, is the building dilapidated? Are there lights on there shouldn't be? Are there people home? Some of those situations, is it a bad area? So, and then as you approach it, just don't look like a victim, be confident. As we enter, of course, now we figured out we know who they're meeting. Again, we like to verify them if you can. Of course, most people we know who they are. Announcing yourself as you enter the property. If you don't do this, it's great practice. I myself at an inspection had a gun drawn on me because the tenant was not notified. And so luckily by announcing, hey, realtor, when he did come out with that firearm, it diffused fairly quickly. But I startled him awake, and it was kind of a fun couple of minutes there. Um, it gives bad people the opportunity to leave. So if you have areas with high squatters, a lot of times, they might want to take off. or even if your sellers are still, still there, it allows them time, like in this case, he had the gun, but he knew at that point I wasn't breaking in. That wasn't my intention. So again, we're going to identify the danger zones and escape routes in the home. Don't let yourself get blocked between the exit. So I always like to keep my exits unlocked so I have a good escape route, and we can do that by arriving early and just knowing the layout. Departing, of course, now we're all thinking, hey, I just got to go back and write this deal. And I'm already thinking about negotiations and the agent that I have to work with, and I don't want to. Don't let your guard down. You can think about all that once you've entered your vehicle with purpose, you get back to the office. So again, backing out, we're going to use those same 525s. We're going to, concentric rings, looking at our vehicle, looking for random stuff, people up and down the street, other people that weren't there when we went in. Have your keys in your hand. Again, like I said, enter your vehicle with a purpose, and check your tires. Are they flat? Again, the band, the quarter, any of that wasn't there. Don't touch it. Call somebody. I don't know if you guys can see my video playing. Okay, cool. This is my checkup party. All right. Does anybody want to tell me anything they saw wrong with that? Does anybody do that with their open houses? Nice little TikTok videos.
We all do that.
Right. If you're not, you probably should be. They work.
Yeah, it's
But
a nice
unfortunately,
video.
I know the major thing wrong with it is they're from KW. Um, but we won't hold that against. But if I'm a bad person and I watched your video, I now know that you're in a vacant house. I know where you are. I know when you're going to be there. I probably know that you're alone unless you pan somebody else into the shot. I know how to get a hold of you or research you because, of course, if you want to find a human, ask a realtor. Um, all things from your advertising can work, but they can work against you in certain aspects. And so I just like to bring in the fact of be aware of your advertising and know that it might not be helping you. Um, with an open house, I love to bring a lender or a friend, somebody in the industry that can, help me with it. Unfortunately, males, we do have a little bit of a leg up there where we're less likely to be attacked. Um, but let others know the event and the timelines, especially people that you trust. Again, we talked about checking in. Set check-in points throughout your open house with your loved ones, and sign-in sheets. You do not stay in my open house unless you've signed in. I use the KV Core app a lot for their open house thing. I did find people that didn't want to use that because they thought I was going to spam them, and so I'd have a manual sign-in sheet, and I'm very stern with that. Like my sellers have entrusted me with the protection of their house and the goods inside of it, and so no, like if you want to come, you have to sign in. But I'm doing that for my safety as well because it's creating a record who was there. And especially if maybe somebody came in and, I did something to diffuse them from attacking me and interrupted their attack cycle, I might be able to then go to my sign-in sheet and figure out who that was. Or maybe I'll put a little, note next to them to go, alert the MLS of this situation that I had, and the name or the pseudonym they're working under, for other people's safety. The other thing I like to do, I don't know how many, like I was taught that you door knock every house that can see the open house sign, and give them a flyer or something like that. I hate door knocking from a safety perspective and in general, but it does work. So I've tailored that back a little bit. And so what I do with an open house is I do a little research. I drive the neighborhood beforehand. I look for, graduation 2025 signs, right? Maybe they're looking to downsize later. their mortgage is 10 years old, right? The average is 7. I try and identify a few houses that I think would be hot and kind of ready for that turnover point. And I do something differently is I go up to their door and before they can slam it, I'll be like, hey, my name's Logan. I'm doing an open house down the street. And for my safety, can I ask you a question? And usually at that point, they'll be like, oh, okay. I'm like, what's up? I'll be like, my open house is done at 4. Can I check in with you when I'm done? To let you know that I'm safe and if something happens, can you notify this people? Give them a business card with your, wife's phone number, your own phone number. I don't even care. Um, Notify them, if something going on. Like I don't want you to investigate in case something is still happening, but like just check in with you. I've never had anybody tell me no. And so when I come back to check in with them, I kind of lay it on and be like, hey, I really appreciate you keeping me safe and having my back while I did that open house. As a thank you, could I get you a $10 gift card to your favorite coffee spot? Would that be okay? Like, I really do appreciate it. And, naturally, of course, at that point, they're like, sure, love to. I'm like, cool. Once I have it, what's your phone number so I can get in contact with you to give it to you? And I just pointed at them. And then I get their phone number because it's awkward. And they're going to give it to me. Go get the gift card. When I come back, I'll text them. Now I'm in their phone. I have, we have each other's contacts. And I usually would bring a CMA back with me and be like, hey, I'm just trying to add value as a realtor. And like the only way I know how to do that is the CMA. So take it, leave it. Here's what's going on with the market. If you got any questions, like again, as a thank you, I'm all yours. I'll answer anything. So it's a very low key delivery in it. There's a lot of value placed in it. There's a lot of thankfulness. The emotions keep me top of memory. I've actually weeded into a few my best friends and realtor relationships that way, and it cost me I don't know, 4 gift cards because I do it to every house that I checked in with. And then I'll even put them into a drip campaign where 4 months after the fact, I'll have it text them like, hey, I was nearby the neighborhood and I remembered what you did for me that day. I just wanted to say thanks. You know, how about that Starbucks? Like another cup of coffee on me? Any questions? So now I have a way to kind of future touch point that's not like an aggressive sales delivery. Um, so it's just take it for what it is. It's just an example of how we can use safety in creating business as we go through our lives. All right, now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes. If guns offend anybody, I'm sorry. Guns should not offend anybody in this room. A lot of people actually don't like me teaching this, even though it's Trek approved for continuing ed now, because they all say the same thing about guns. Like, oh, we don't want to talk about guns. The problem with the industry is 54% of realtors identify that they carry some kind of self-defensive weapon or tool. So I think it's important for brokerages and people to understand their agents are carrying something and you should get ahead of it. The percent of realtors that are carrying, shockingly, 55% women. It's gone up 5%. Like, good for women. 49% men. We could do better. Best tool we all got is our phones. There are so many features. I'm not going to dive into all of these. Sounds like this is recorded. You can come back and look at it later. The most common ones are the Find My iPhone or Find My Droid apps there. GPS trackers, Life 360. I think everybody, if you got kids, you got Life 360. Sentry Key has their agent safety. Make sure your actual stuff is built into your Sentry Key app or whatever app you're using for those emergency notifications, because a lot of those boxes will do that now. Forewarn, again, I haven't met an MLS that does not give this to agents free. If you're not using it, you're crazy. It's great for business and for your own safety. Home Snap Pro, I don't have a lot of experience with, but the People Smart, the Noon Light, these are all a lot of different things that are either on your phone, can be downloaded to your phone, or your phone can be used for. Don't ignore the social media groups, and please don't do exactly what I do and probably 90%. When you log in the MLS and it's like, alert, click, Um, some of those have good information on them. I just think we need to make the delivery better because I think we all ignore them. If you want to go somewhere where your phone isn't going to work, again, I started out in Montana, did a lot of land showings in the middle of nowhere. Your cell phone is not going to play. So I actually got one of these spot transmitters. So you can hit it, it'll send an SOS, you can text from it. I was able to write it off with my accountant as a, professional expense for real estate. So if that's the style of real estate you do, or there's a part of town where you have bad service, um, this is a great little tool to have on you, basically like a little mini life alert. But it works when your phone doesn't. Use of force. Um, Yeah, there's use of force is wide, and I'm not going to tell you that guns are the best just because they're my favorite. Um, it's 100% up to you. The only thing I ask is whatever you pick, you get trained on, and you continue to train on. I disagree with their title here of non-lethal. I think any of this stuff where non-lethal, I call it less lethal. If you pepper spray somebody with asthma in the throat, you could kill them or blind them and they walk into traffic. Tase somebody with a heart condition, you could give them a heart attack. So I don't think use of force really has a non-lethal perspective. Um, but in essence, they have the lesser chance of killing an attacker, and in a lot of cases, don't have as severe of legal consequences. Um, but you need to know what they're capable of, and how they act. So like me, I get asked all the time, hey, if you go somewhere where you can't take your gun, what do you carry as a backup? And I carry pepper spray. I use a stream or a gel style, not an aerosol version, because I want the more direct ability to aim. And then I always tell people like, hey, like straight down the face and across the eyes. So get in the holy water. So if you're Catholic, you already got the muscle memory to give them the holy water. So, but know what they do. Because again, that aerosol, there's a chance it's going to come back and hit you as well. That taser, for those of you that have never been tased, it's terrible. It is absolutely terrible. But after that 5 or so seconds is over, you wake up and you don't feel anything because all of your nerve endings are resetting. You're super awake and you're probably pissed. So the thing I don't like about tasers, especially the ones that have to shoot the prongs, is again, we have an aiming issue. And the wind can carry those. If you don't get both prongs, you don't win. But you're stuck to them on a 10 to 15 foot leash and you just made the Hulk. So I'd rather pepper spray him and run, is my theory. So again, personal choice, but know the pros and cons of what you're carrying. Tactical pens, I love these. TSA never sees them. I think every realtor should have a tactical pen. They sell them on Amazon, but they actually do work as a pen. They function as a glass breaker. They are strong enough to stab, or you could put it in your fist and do a lot of damage with it. And they are super discreet. Nobody will ever notice they're there. So I love little tactical pens. I guess we talked about pepper spray a little bit as far as the function of employing it, but of course it works by using that capsaicin, the cayenne pepper stuff to, make everything burn. If you know somebody that can eat anything spicy and it doesn't affect them, it is likely they're not affected by pepper spray. Those people exist. So again, not 100% effective. Again, we want it in those mucous membranes and, so throat, eyes. If you can get them in the face, likely it's going to trail down, and it'll usually stop attackers. Impact weapons, these would be such as like a baton. Definitely check your state's legal code because a lot of places batons are actually not super, like there's rules against where you can't use them. Um, But if you're a baton person, all the power to you. So you can use it, hit pressure points. They're pretty effective if you're trained with them. Again, tasers, they're gonna shock the living hell out of you. but they're going to make all your muscles contract. There are people that can fight through this. But again, I like this picture because it demonstrates that leash that I tell you you're putting to yourself is if you want to drop that thing and run, you have to stop tasing them. So you have to give them the full ride, and eventually that's over. So once it's over, again, they're going to be the Hulk. Tactical flashlights. Every realtor should have a flashlight. So if you're gonna have one, it might as well be tactical. What makes it tactical? Good marketing. But I look for ones that have a good casing on them, or in this case, in the picture, you can see that bezel kind of has some cutouts, a little more aggressive. And they may even make tactical flashlights now that have a stun feature to the front of them. So, I mean, again, it's pretty unsuspecting. Be used as an impact weapon as well. But just having the light strobe function is very disorienting. So I always make sure I get something with the strobe function as well. But if you're going to have it, have one that can do multiple things. Not a huge fan of knives unless you're trained with them. It's very close quarters and it's really hard to mount a legal defense with a knife. Now that being said, you might be stuck in a kitchen and that's what you got. If you're going to take a self-defense class, something a little hands-on, disarming a knife attack would probably be a good one. There's a pretty high chance that, an attack would occur with a knife on you. And that's because statistically felons all have knives. They're used way more in a lot of attacks than firearms or things of that nature. Because if you think about it, if you're a felon, you can't carry a gun, but what you can legally carry, of course, is a knife. So I have one on me at all times just because they're handy, but it's not my go-to self-defense mechanism. And of course, firearms. I get sticky topic. Make yourself your choice for yourself here, but it is your duty to know the law. I recommend if your state has some kind of concealed carry, whatever program license to carry, you take that, even if your state is constitutional carry. So you know the laws, you have a better legal standing. And the big thing is you need to know what you're doing with it. You need to practice. Shooting paper at the range is super easy and it's very low stress, and that's where most people stop. 90% of the problem in defensive shooting is getting your gun out in the first place in time. I don't know about you other vets, but I carry appendix. The military never trained me to do that, nor do I have the ego to think I did. I meet a lot of vets that are like, oh, I got a handgun. Like, I was in the military forever. Well, I was never issued a handgun and I never carried an appendix. So if that's not your forte, learn to use it and learn to get to it. And that's with any of these. You have to practice like doing the entire motion with these. Carrying a gun's a big decision, but it is the ultimate equalizer in a lot of situations. So um, find a gun that fits you, fits your hand, is comfortable for you. Don't let just anybody pick it out for you. And then I do personally recommend spend at least $400 or $500 on a decent one. It needs to work. So with any of those, we need to, of course, know where does not just deadly force, but force begin relatively. We won't dig super deep into this, but deadly force in most states is defined as a level of force which is likely or could cause the death or serious injury of another person. So at the end of the day, the prosecutor is going to decide if you have a claim to self-defense or if you did anything wrong. You're not going to have a choice in that, no matter how you feel about the situation. So understand the use of force and deadly force. And there's a few rules that need to remain in place throughout that you need to be aware of. Of course, the first reasonable person test, this is how you're going to be judged in court. Unfortunately, a lot of self-defense cases do make it all the way to court. It's not like, the cops show up, they give you a high five and they move on. The cops are going to book you, they're going to take you to the station, and they're going to hand you off to a detective because they got other shit to do. And in most cases, if there's a homicide involved, it is instantly like, it doesn't matter, you're getting arrested. So plan for that and be thinking that, at the end of the day, what your actions happened, even though you had 7 nanoseconds to think about it, are going to be judged by reasonable people in your area. So these rules vary a little bit by state in some capacity, but they're the main four rules that I preach when it comes to using force or deadly force. You have to be in immediate fear of death or great grave bodily harm, right? If you can't articulate that in a situation, you shouldn't be shooting. You have to be the innocent party. That doesn't mean you can't have words and then disengage and then it escalates again, right? Use of force is kind of an up and down thing, like doing risk assessments, right? Everything changes, it's fluid. But if you provoked it or you were part of the problem, you can't claim self-defense in use of force because you antagonized it. No lesser force is sufficient or available to stop the threat, right? That's what needed to happen. This is also a reason I don't personally carry pepper spray and a gun at the same time. Because in the moment, muscle memory is going to kick in, and I'm going to lift the shirt and grab the gun. I'm not even going to think about the pepper spray. So, and here's the one that I noticed that the biggest change. So I'd look into this depending on what state you're from. No reasonable means of retreat or escape. I'm in Texas for a reason. We have stand your ground laws. That doesn't mean your actions won't be scrutinized in court. If there was a chance that you could have gotten away, they are going to grill you on it. But Texas, I believe Florida, they have pretty robust stand your ground laws, so you don't actually have to retreat in that situation. California, you have a duty to retreat, so you actually have to attempt to get out of there. So all these laws are going to be different depending on your state, and I'm not an attorney, just a realtor. So I leave everybody when it comes to defensive classes or anything like that with my Shark Tank analogy. I want you to go back yourself. This has to be a you thing, and think to yourself what you would use deadly force over. So to make that simple, I'm going to give you the Shark Tank analogy. If you dropped your phone in a tank full of sharks, would you jump in after it? If the answer is no, then you probably shouldn't kill somebody over it. If that's your truck, if that's your dog, if that's your kids, ask yourself these things. Would you jump into a tank of sharks over it? And if the answer is no, then you probably shouldn't shoot over it. Like, I will hand you my truck keys all day and be like, doesn't matter. I need a deduction. I got insurance anyways. Like, it's not worth my life. It's not worth taking someone's life. So my personal list in Texas, dogs are considered property. It's the only property I own that I'm willing to shoot over. I will go John Hick on you over if you touch my dogs. Naturally, my kids are on that list and my wife most days. So make your list for yourself. So can you tell my wife's not here? Oh, sorry. I didn't have it all the way through. Um, and to really hit this one, the reason, well, I mean, one, it's not worth killing over, but again, we're not guaranteed to win the gunfight. And if you're not prepared, you might have just handed your attacker a gun. So, you know, think, please, whatever you pick, I'm going to harp this home. Just get trained. As fellow veterans, please don't hide behind the veteran moniker. I have had more guns pointed at me by other veterans in licensed carry classes than probably the general public. I think we kind of get that bravado a little bit that we've been around them and exposed to them. But if your carrying style changed, if your weapon system changed, just like anything else, it's got to be muscle memory, and we have to train. Pepper spray, same thing. If it's going to be in your purse, you better know how to get to it. You better be able to do it quick. Train that method in everything you do. Know how these things react. If you're going to buy pepper spray, I recommend buying two. Go train with one, spray it somewhere upwind, and practice with it. Carry the other one. A year later, when it expires, you use it as a training aid. Buy another one, and get the same one so that way you can feel it. We literally just did a class on firearm safety to blind people, and everybody thought we were crazy, but we're all training to trying to get to the point where we can do it blindfolded, right? You disassemble your weapon, put it back blindfolded. Well, they're actually blind, so they have to train to that level of proficiency no matter what. And there are some really skilled people in there, shockingly. So we need to train to that level as well. Know what your plan is and know how to operate it. So with that, I'm gonna go to questions. I'm gonna leave you with two of my favorite quotes. Of course, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Benjamin Franklin and stay strapped or get clapped. George Washington, probably. Um, and yeah, let me know if you got any questions.
That's hilarious. Wow, so this is really cool. I love just my 2 cents, and then I guess that anyone else can share too. Like, I love how you kept mentioning like you need to get trained, and that's hitting home for me because like I have my weapon and I have not used it in a gazillion years. So, and I'm just like, okay, well, even if I was to say I might go somewhere sketch, let me take it with me. I've not even cocked that thing. Like, it's not been cleaned. Like, so I'm just like, I really do need to go and like train on that and everything. So thank you for like repeating that over and over because I've been meaning to do it. And I'm just like, you know what? I really do need to do that. Um, and yeah, that situational awareness thing, like my husband's a veteran and he's always like telling me, he's like, I'm always aware when I sit at the restaurant, I want to know where the exit is and all this stuff. And because I'm with him a lot, I just tend to use zero brain cells and just kind of hang out with him kind of thing. And just count on him to take care of, just I'm not paying attention because I know he is. And that's not good training for me when I'm on my own. You know what I mean? Because I'm itty bitty and teeny tiny. And yes, I'm on my phone like a lot. So, anyway, those tips are just really basic, but also like things you just don't think about. Like, and I grew up in a big city. So, some of those I'm like, well, duh. But how many of us did not? Like, we grew up in a place where like we don't lock the doors and we're just like, whatever. And, you just never know. Like, when, you're putting yourself at risk. So, this is really great. Thank you.
Yeah, I like to gamify everything. And because if you could gamify it, your brain will start doing it subconsciously. And that's really where you want to get at. So my wife, I mentioned, her situational awareness was garbage. Um, so I printed off, and this is a very judgmental game. Don't hold me to it. I didn't make it. It's called Walmart Bingo. It's a bingo card of the most atrocious things you can see at Walmart. And so we started playing Walmart Bingo. It got her people watching more, which I think we're all guilty of. That's almost our profession too. And so now if she did that for a long time, but now when she goes to the store, she's looking for like crazy things to tell me about in Walmart, which means she's paying attention. So we
Yeah.
we made it fun. It's stuck in her brain. And anything when we do training, when we're making that mental pathway, if we do a mental exercise, it's like clearing the trees out of the forest for our road. And then every time we rehash it, we're grading the road, we're paving the road. Now it's a 4-lane highway. We're just making that whole thing faster and more efficient. So it's not a one and done scenario. And to your point, like not touching your weapon, just what is it? Last Friday, I went with a gal and she had an issue with her firearm and it was literally rusted shut. So we had to take it into the gunsmith and it was jammed, double fed bullets and rusted that way. And she was like, oh,
Right.
so
Yeah. But that I love how you mentioned that game because what a cool way to get your kids also to be situationally aware, maybe with a toned down version of the game. But
yeah,
a
yeah,
lot of kids just don't have like kids don't have that awareness at all. And like, kids that walk to the bus stop or when they, get to be like preteens and stuff and they want to go hang out somewhere with their friends and whatnot, and they can, get themselves into trouble and whatnot. And that's a good way to train them on being aware of their surroundings because they're innocent, right? Like we know there's bad things out there, but kids don't. So as soon as you said that game, I was like, oh man, like that's really great for kids too.
yeah. The kids thing is a great issue. I get asked because guns are everywhere in my house. And they're like, aren't you worried? And I'm like, no. In my opinion, I say curiosity kills the cat, but education kills curiosity. So if my kids are curious to my guns, I let them play with them. We do it safely and we talk about it. And that so now they don't Roblox is way cooler than dad's guns. But a lot of us grew up with like a fire plan. Like if the house ever caught on fire, we meet at this neighbor's house for accountability. But it's weird to say a home defense plan. What would happen if somebody breaks in? In my case, I had to tell my kids, if you hear loud things at night, please don't come investigate. Let dad do that. And then we have a Jack and Jill between the boys' rooms. So I said, hey, big kid, go through the bathroom, get your brother, get under the bed. So now the only wall I'm worried about shooting into is not an issue anymore. I know he's not there.
Yeah.
But we had to have some rough conversations. It's the day we are. Both my kids have level 3+ soft plates in their backpacks. So that'll stop up to a 44 Magnum. They weigh nothing. And I tell them, like, if this happens, get your backpack, put it on your stomach, and then if there's any books or whatever, I'm like, and just get small. It's a rough conversation, but they have it,
Gotta,
they know what it is. They all have tactical pens. I haven't found a school yet doesn't that has caught my tactical pen, but yeah, it's
that's
just
awesome.
it's a conversation, and if you can make it fun, make it aware while teaching them, it really does stick. So.
Yeah, I love it. Anyone else have questions, comments?
Logan, I didn't know you were so funny.
I'm really not. I mean, just looking.
I was cracking up. But I do think that Garrett was super smart in asking if you wouldn't mind, would you create a go bag packing list for us that we could share of just like
Um,
things that you suggest that we would have?
yeah, I can build a template. Um, but my caveat would, I guess I'll put it in the list, like things specific to you. And then the major mistake I see with go bags is people put everything in them, and then you end up with a 75-pound bag that you can't carry more than a half mile. So, but yeah, I can put together like a general um, get home bag, vehicle safety bag kind of a thing.
Thank you. That would be awesome. All right. Anyone else have any questions? If not, then we are done. Yay. All right, let's do it. Thank you so much, Logan.
Yep.
Matthew, did you want to say something? I saw you on
Oh,
mute.
no. I was just going to say thank you.
Oh, awesome.
A
Yeah, for
great
sure.
class.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so
Appreciate
much,
it.
Logan. And thank you all for
Thanks, guys.
joining us. We really appreciate it. And this will be on all the groups. The recording will be on all the groups for everyone to watch. So yeah, thank you so much for popping in, and we'll see you next time.